It all started with something as innocent as a bouquet of flowers, a vase of crimson roses perched on her desk. That's all it took for my life to lurch out of alignment. I was sitting at home, lazily scrolling through my inbox, when my phone buzzed with a notification. The message was from Chris, one of Lily's coworkers, more of a casual acquaintance I'd chatted with at a couple of her office parties. Attached was a photo. In the image, Lily was at her desk, leaning forward with this dazzling, almost giddy smile, her gaze fixed on the vibrant roses standing tall beside her. Beneath the photo, Chris had written, "Man, these are gorgeous. Anniversary surprise? The problem? I hadn't sent them. At first, I figured it was one of those office things, maybe some team-building gesture or a client appreciation gift. Trying to brush off the unease prickling at the edges of my mind, I texted her. "Hey, saw the flowers. They look amazing. Who sent them?" The little typing bubble appeared for a moment, then vanished. A few minutes later, her reply came through. "Oh, just from a client. No big deal." Something about her response didn't sit right. Lily wasn't the type to keep random things cluttering her desk. She always liked her space clean and focused. Yet there they were, proudly displayed in the photo, and that smile, God, it had been weeks since I'd seen her smile like that. Still, I told myself to let it go. Things between us had been strained lately, sure, but nothing earth-shattering. Work had been stressful for her. That had to be it. But the next morning, everything shifted. I was up early, brewing coffee for the two of us, a little ritual we'd managed to hold on to despite the whirlwind of life. Her phone buzzed on the counter while I was pouring the milk. Absent-mindedly, I glanced at the screen. "Hope the flowers brightened your day. Can't wait to see you again soon." No name. Just a number. My chest tightened. I stood there, staring at the screen as the steam from the coffee swirled into the air. Lily wasn't the kind of person to get random personal texts, especially not ones like this. She walked into the kitchen a moment later, her hair damp from the shower, looking as calm as ever. I couldn't help myself. I pointed to the phone. "Who's that?" Her eyes flicked to the screen, and for a fraction of a second, her expression was unreadable. Then, with a quick swipe, she dismissed the notification. "Oh, just some mix-up. Probably spam." Before I could say anything else, she kissed me on the cheek and grabbed her coffee. "Don't forget, I'm meeting Sarah tonight after work. Don't wait up." The words felt like a door slamming shut in my face. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But by the time she walked out the door, a cold knot of unease had settled in my stomach. That's when I did something I'd never done before. I followed her. Calling in sick, I parked my car down the street from her office, feeling equal parts ashamed and determined. Hours dragged by before she finally stepped out at lunchtime. Her stride was brisk, her posture purposeful. But she wasn't alone. A tall man, dark-haired and impeccably dressed, was waiting by the curb. He handed her a small gift bag, and she laughed, an easy, warm laugh I hadn't heard in months. They walked toward a nearby restaurant, his hand briefly resting on her lower back. It wasn't a casual touch. It felt like I was watching someone else's life. When Lily came home that evening, her smile was bright, her mood upbeat as she rattled off details about her girl talk with Sarah. I stayed silent, my stomach churning with the image of her leaning into that man. But I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. That night I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her hand brushing his arm, his hand lingering on her back. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was something darker. The next morning, Lily acted like nothing had happened, kissing me goodbye as she left for work. But her lips tasted different, like a secret I wasn't meant to know. I decided I needed proof. I started small. Her Instagram was a curated highlight reel of sunsets, coffee cups, and pictures of us. Nothing unusual. But her tagged photos told a different story. One picture, posted 3 weeks earlier, caught my attention. She was at a bar I didn't recognize, leaning against a booth, her drink held casually in one hand. Her head tilted slightly towards someone cropped out of the frame. The caption read, "Such a fun night." The photo was posted by a guy named Jason Carter. I didn't know him. Clicking on his profile, I found myself scrolling through shots of office events, ones from her company. Then I found it. A photo of Jason standing next to the man I'd seen with Lily. The caption read, "Another deal sealed with my partner in crime, Alex. Big things ahead. Alex." Now I had a name. When Lily texted me later that evening, saying she'd be late because of a client dinner, I wanted to confront her. I wanted to shout, "Who the hell is Alex?" But I held back. She was too good at dodging questions, too quick to deflect. I needed more. That night, after she drifted off to sleep, I broke a promise I'd once made to myself. With my hands trembling, I unlocked her phone. I hated what I was doing, but the doubt gnawed at me until I couldn't resist anymore. Most of her messages were perfectly innocent. Work chats, quick exchanges with her mom, casual plans with her best friend, Sarah. But when I searched for Alex, nothing came up, no texts, no mentions. That's when I saw it, a folder in her email labeled personal. My heart thudded against my ribs as I opened it. And there it was, a trail of emails between her and Alex, each subject line disguised with mundane labels like client update or project timeline. At first glance, they seemed professional, until I stumbled on one that started with, "Last night was everything." It didn't stop there. "I can't wait to sneak away for the weekend. These flowers are nothing compared to how I feel when I'm with you." Every word felt like a dagger, twisting deeper into my chest. I barely registered the sound of her stirring in bed until her voice cut through the silence like a blade. "What are you doing with my phone?" Caught. I turned to face her, the screen still glowing in my hand. "Who's Alex?" Her face went pale, but only for a heartbeat. Then, like flipping a switch, her expression hardened. "Why are you going through my phone? Don't turn this on me, Lily," I snapped, my voice trembling with anger. "I saw the emails. I know about the flowers. About the weekend." She sat up, her eyes sharp as glass. "You're insane. Alex is a client. Those emails are work-related. If you're feeling insecure, that's your problem, not mine. Don't lie to me," I shouted, my voice louder than I'd ever intended. "I followed you yesterday. I saw you with him." Her mask slipped for a brief second, just enough for me to catch the tightening of her lips. But instead of crumbling, she fought back. "You followed me?" she said, her voice dripping with mock disbelief. "Are you spying on me now? Jesus, Saren, maybe if you spent more time trusting me instead of playing detective, we wouldn't be having this conversation." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was twisting everything, making me the bad guy. "Just tell me the truth," I demanded, my chest heaving. She leaned back against the headboard, crossing her arms with a cold, detached look. "Fine. You want the truth? The truth is you're paranoid. You've been smothering me for months, and I'm done with it. Alex is a client, end of story. If you can't handle that, maybe you should look in the mirror and figure out why you're so insecure." Her words hit me like a slap, but it wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Dismissive. Uncaring. Like I was just another annoyance to swat away. I didn't sleep that night. For the first time, I wasn't even sure I wanted to. By the time morning came, I'd made up my mind. If Lily wanted to turn this into a game, fine. I'd play, but on my terms. She was already gone when I woke up, leaving behind a text like breadcrumbs on a trail. "Heading into work. Late meeting tonight. Don't wait up. Love you. Love me." The words felt hollow, more like muscle memory than truth. I wasn't about to let her gaslighting and excuses bury the truth. Instead of stewing in my anger, I decided to act. First, I called Chris, the coworker who'd sent me the photo of the flowers. I kept my tone casual, like I was just making small talk. "Hey, Chris. Random question, does Lily ever talk about someone named Alex at work?" There was a pause, followed by a cautious reply. Yeah? Alex Myers. Big-time client. Why? Just curious, I said, forcing a light chuckle. She mentions him at home sometimes, and I wanted to get a sense of what he's like. Chris laughed too, but there was something uneasy in his tone. I mean, he's intense. Definitely one of those guys who likes to charm the ladies, if you know what I mean. I clenched my fist, gripping the phone tighter. Got it. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I identified the threat. Check. By 7 p.m., I was parked across the street from Lily's office. Her car was still there, glinting under the glow of the streetlights. But instead of heading into the building, I walked a block down to a cafe with a clear view of the lobby. I didn't have to wait long. At 7:42, Lily walked out. And she wasn't alone. Alex was right beside her, his hand hovering just a little too close to her waist. She didn't pull away. Instead, she smiled at him, the kind of smile that used to belong to me. They got into his car, a sleek black sedan that screamed money. My heartbeat pounded in my ears as I followed them downtown. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly I thought it might snap. They pulled up to a trendy restaurant, the kind with dim lighting and overpriced cocktails. I parked nearby, my mind racing. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was real. I parked a couple of spaces away, far enough to stay out of sight but close enough to see them walk inside. Lily wasn't dressed for a casual business dinner. Her skirt hugged her hips with an intention that couldn't be ignored, and her heels clicked against the pavement like a countdown to something I wasn't sure I was ready to face. I couldn't take it anymore. Without thinking, I got out of the car and followed them. The hostess at the door greeted me with a syrupy smile. Do you have a reservation? I'm meeting someone, I said, my eyes darting over the sea of tables searching. And then I saw them. Tucked into a booth at the back, their heads were close together, her hand resting lightly on his arm. My vision narrowed to a tunnel, my pulse thundering in my ears. I marched straight to their table, my footsteps somehow louder than the restaurant's background noise. Lily's head snapped up, her eyes going wide. For the first time in days I saw fear there. Aaron! She stammered, her voice shaky. What are you doing here? Alex leaned back in his seat, calm, almost amused. And you must be the husband. His voice was slick, like oil, smooth but leaving a residue that clung to my skin. I ignored him, locking my gaze on her. Get up, I said, my tone low but firm, the weight of sleepless nights and endless suspicions carried in every word. Aaron, it's not what it looks like, she began, her voice faltering. Don't, I snapped, cutting her off. Don't insult me by pretending this is innocent. Alex raised a hand, his tone laced with condescension. Hey man, maybe we should all calm down. Shut up. My voice was sharp, my eyes never leaving hers. You've been lying to me for weeks. I gave you every chance to tell me the truth, but instead you're here, with him. She stood up abruptly, her face flushed, whether from anger or embarrassment, I couldn't tell. Her voice dropped to a hiss. You're making a scene. I laughed, but the sound was hollow, empty of humor. This isn't a scene, Lily. This is me finally seeing you for who you are. Alex smirked, leaning back in his seat like he was enjoying the show. That was my breaking point. I grabbed the small gift bag sitting on the table, the one he'd handed her the day before, and flung it to the ground. Its contents spilled out, revealing a delicate silver necklace with a heart-shaped pendant. Is this for work too? I asked, my voice shaking. She didn't respond. For a moment, the three of us stood there, frozen in the wreckage. And then Lily said the words that shattered whatever was left of my resolve. Maybe if you weren't so boring, I wouldn't need to go out with someone who actually makes me feel alive. Her words hit me like a sledgehammer. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, but I didn't say a word. The restaurant around us faded, the clinking glasses, the murmured conversations, all of it drowned out by the roaring in my ears. You're unbelievable, I said finally, my voice cold and steady. Enjoy your night, Lily. I'm done. And with that, I turned and walked out. The drive home was a blur. The hum of the engine was the only thing grounding me, keeping my thoughts from devouring me whole. Her words echoed in my mind, each syllable like a slap. Maybe if you weren't so boring. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my chest felt like it had been hollowed out. The house was dark and quiet, but it no longer felt like a sanctuary. Instead, it felt like a mausoleum of everything we built together. The pictures on the walls, the souvenirs from weekend trips, the little mementos of our life, they all felt like lies now, props in a play I didn't know I'd been cast in. I wanted to destroy it all. Rip the photos from the walls, throw her clothes into the street, anything to dull the ache in my chest. But instead I sank onto the couch and stared at nothing. She didn't come home that night. At first, I thought she'd gone back to Alex's place. But around midnight, a notification popped up on my phone, a charge on our shared credit card. She'd booked a room at a downtown hotel. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. The next morning, I made a decision I never thought I'd have to make. I called a lawyer. It wasn't a step I took lightly. Hell, I hadn't even decided if I wanted a divorce yet, but I needed advice. I needed to know what my options were if I chose to walk away from the woman who had become a stranger overnight. The lawyer was calm, professional, walking me through the steps, the paperwork, the messiness of untangling lives that had been intertwined for years. She also gave me one crucial piece of advice: gather evidence. Evidence. The words sounded clinical, almost detached, but it made sense. If Lily wanted to turn this into a battlefield, I had to be prepared. I spent the rest of the day going through her emails again, screenshotting everything: the messages about their weekend plans, the flowers, the late night client dinners. It was all there, laid out in black and white. I forwarded the screenshots to a folder on my email and printed hard copies. By the time Lily walked through the door that evening, I was ready. She didn't look surprised to see me. If anything, she looked annoyed, like I was some inconvenience she'd forgotten to deal with. "Can we talk?" I asked, standing in the middle of the living room. She tossed her bag onto the table, her movements careless, almost dismissive. "What now, Erin?" Her tone hit me like a slap. "What now?" My voice cracked under the weight of disbelief and anger. "You disappear all night, and that's all you have to say?" She crossed her arms, leaning back against the wall like the conversation was beneath her. "I needed space," she said flatly. "After the stunt you pulled at the restaurant, I figured we both did." "The stunt I pulled?" I stepped closer, the words spilling out of me, hot and unchecked. "Do you even hear yourself, Lily? You've been lying to me for weeks, sneaking around, and now you're blaming me for being upset about it?" Her eyes flashed, but instead of retreating, she leaned into the fight, her voice sharp as glass. "You're obsessed, Erin. You're suffocating me. This isn't about Alex, it's about the fact that you can't handle me having my own life." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head in disbelief. "Your own life? Is that what you call this? Lying? Cheating? Running off to hotels in the middle of the night? How stupid do you think I am?" Her jaw tightened, but she didn't deny it. Instead, her voice turned cold, dripping with disdain. "You want to play the victim? Fine. Be the martyr. Cry about how I'm such a terrible wife. But let's not pretend you're blameless here." I stared at her, stunned. "What the hell are you talking about?" That's when she snapped. "You stop trying, Erin." Her voice cracked under the weight of her emotions. "You stop being exciting. Everything about our life is predictable and boring, and I'm tired of it. Alex, he made me feel like a person again. Like I wasn't just some wife stuck in your routine." Her words were a sucker punch, knocking the wind out of me. "Stuck?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I loved you, Lily. I built this life for us. For you." She turned away, her expression hardening once more. "Well, maybe that's the problem," she said. "You built it for you, Erin, not for us. You never asked me what I wanted. You just assumed I'd fall in line." I stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman standing in front of me with the one I'd loved for so long. But there was no going back now. "Then let's stop pretending," I said, my voice ice cold. "If I'm so boring, if you're so unhappy, let's end this. Let's get a divorce." For the first time, she hesitated. Her lips parted like she wanted to respond, but no words came out. You wanted excitement, right? Well, here it is, I said, my voice tinged with bitterness. Go be with Alex. Have your exciting life. I'll move on. Her silence was deafening. Without waiting for a reply, I brushed past her, grabbed my keys, and walked out. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay. I drove aimlessly through the city, the streets blurring into a haze of neon lights and shadows. My thoughts raced faster than the car, replaying every word, every accusation, every lie. Her face, cold and unrecognizable, was burned into my mind. Eventually, I pulled into the empty parking lot of an all-night diner. The flickering neon sign buzzed faintly, casting a red glow over the cracked pavement. I sat there gripping the steering wheel, my knuckles white with the force of it. Divorce. The word hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. I didn't want to look, but curiosity, or maybe hope, got the better of me. It was a text from Lily. We need to talk. Talk? About what? There was nothing left to say. Before I could respond, another text came through. Come home. Please. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't regret. But it was something, a crack in the armor she'd worn so smugly before. Against my better judgment, I started the car and headed back. When I walked into the house, the lights were on. Lily was pacing in the living room, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. When she saw me, she froze. You left, she said, as if I'd committed the ultimate betrayal. I dropped my keys on the table. What did you expect? You called me boring and made me feel like a fool in my own marriage. Why would I stay? Her jaw tightened, but instead of snapping back, she sighed and sank onto the edge of the couch. Look, she began, her tone softer now, almost placating. I shouldn't have said those things. I was angry, okay? I didn't mean it. I crossed my arms, keeping my distance. You didn't mean it? Which part, Lily? The lies? The cheating? Or the part where you said Alex makes you feel alive? She flinched, but only slightly. It's not what you think. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Don't insult me, Lily. I saw the emails. I saw you with him. What exactly do you think I'm imagining here? Her hands gripped the edge of the couch, her knuckles white. Finally, the mask came off. Fine, she snapped, her voice rising. Yes, I've been seeing Alex. Is that what you wanted to hear? Are you happy now? The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I already knew the truth, but hearing her admit it made it real in a way I wasn't prepared for. Why? I asked, my voice cracking. Why him? Why anyone? She stood up, her posture defiant. Because I was drowning, Aaron. Every day with you felt like I was fading into the background, she said, her voice steady but devoid of warmth. Nathan made me feel seen. He made me feel alive. Her words sliced through me, sharper than any knife. So you threw away our marriage for what? For some thrill? For attention? She didn't respond right away. Instead, she walked to the window, staring out at the quiet night. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer, almost distant. It wasn't just about him. It was about me. About who I am when I'm not just Aaron's wife. I felt the heat rise in my chest. And that meant destroying me in the process? She turned to face me, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw regret in her eyes. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. I didn't plan for it to happen, she said. But it did. And now here we are. I stared at her, my heart shattering into pieces too jagged to put back together. Do you love him? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. She hesitated, and in that hesitation, I found my answer. I don't know, she admitted finally. But I know I can't keep living like this, pretending everything's okay when it's not. Her words were the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. Whatever scraps of hope or love I'd clung to were gone. Then you need to leave, I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Pack your things and go. Be with Nathan. Be alive. But don't expect me to be here waiting when it all falls apart. For a moment, it looked like she might argue, but then her shoulders slumped in defeat. I'll stay at the hotel tonight, she said quietly. I'll come back for my things tomorrow. I watched as she grabbed her bag and walked out the door without another word. The sound of it closing behind her was deafening, a final punctuation mark on everything we'd once had. I stood there in the empty house, the weight of it all crashing down around me. It felt like the end of something I couldn't quite name, something I'd believed would last forever. And maybe it was. The silence was unbearable. It wasn't just the absence of Lily. It was the absence of everything she'd taken with her, the laughter, the warmth, even the petty arguments that once seemed like the worst thing in the world. All of it was gone, leaving behind a hollow shell of what had been our life. I tried to sleep, but her words haunted me every time I closed my eyes. Nathan made me feel seen. What did that even mean? Had I been so blind, so complacent, that I let my wife slip away right in front of me? By 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep. I started pacing the house, my eyes catching on all the little reminders of her. A jacket draped over a chair, her favorite mug on the counter, a pair of heels by the door. It was surreal. She wasn't here, but her presence lingered like a ghost, mocking me. That's when I saw it. Her work laptop was sitting on the kitchen table, half hidden under a stack of mail. She must have forgotten it in her rush to leave. For a moment, I hesitated. I'd already invaded her privacy. What more could I find? But the ache in my chest, the need to know, was stronger than my guilt. I opened the laptop. Her password, our wedding date, unlocked it immediately. The irony wasn't lost on me. Her inbox was the first thing I checked. Most of the incriminating emails were already saved on my devices, but I skimmed through her recent messages anyway, hoping for something, closure maybe. There was nothing new. Then I noticed a folder on her desktop labeled Trips. Trips? We hadn't taken a trip together in over a year. Clicking on it felt like tearing the lid off Pandora's box. Inside were dozens of PDFs, receipts, and itineraries. Flights to Miami, hotel bookings in Chicago, dinner reservations at restaurants I'd never heard of. The dates matched nights she'd work late or claimed to be on business trips. One receipt caught my eye, a booking for 2 at a luxury resort. The note attached made my stomach turn. Romantic getaway package for Lily and Nathan. I felt bow rise in my throat. She hadn't just been sneaking around, she'd built an entire fantasy life with him, a world where I didn't exist. Then it got worse. Buried in another folder, hidden under an unassuming name, were photos. Pictures of the two of them, laughing on a beach, clinking glasses over candlelit dinners, his arm wrapped around her waist. In one photo, she was wearing a silver necklace I didn't recognize. The pendant caught the sunlight, and I realized it was the same necklace from the gift bag he'd given her. I slammed the laptop shut, my hands trembling. This wasn't just a fling. This was something deeper, something that mocked every memory, every moment I thought we'd shared. Before I could fully process the betrayal, my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a notification from our shared calendar. Lily's birthday dinner, 7 p.m. tonight. I'd completely forgotten. A month ago, when life still felt normal, I'd made a reservation at her favorite restaurant and ordered a custom cake. I'd imagined her face lighting up with joy when she saw it. Now, that vision felt like a cruel joke. The thought of celebrating her felt absurd. Yet, amidst the whirlwind of anger and heartbreak, an idea began to form. I called the restaurant and confirmed the reservation, making sure every detail remained exactly as planned. Then I sent Lily a text. Happy early birthday. Let's talk tonight. I've got a surprise for you at 7 p.m. It was a gamble. Part of me wondered if she'd show up at all, but another part, the part that needed to confront her one last time, hoped she wouldn't be able to resist. The rest of the day passed in a haze. My mind replayed every moment of our marriage, dissecting memories, searching for cracks I should have noticed sooner. The guilt of my own blindness mixed with a burning sense of betrayal, the two emotions swirling together until they were indistinguishable. By the time 7 p.m. arrived, I was seated at the table, waiting. The restaurant was dimly lit, with the low hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses filling the air. A waiter brought over a bottle of her favorite wine, giving me a polite smile before retreating. She arrived at 7:15, her steps hesitant, her expression wary as she spotted me. "Aaron," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "This feels unnecessary." "Unnecessary?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Funny, that's exactly how I felt about your business dinners with Alex." Her face stiffened, but she didn't respond. The waiter returned, this time with the cake. It was a small but elegant creation, the words "Happy Birthday" Lily scrawled across the top in delicate icing. I motioned for him to leave it untouched in the center of the table. "I thought we should celebrate," I said, leaning back in my chair. "After all, you've been busy celebrating without me." Her eyes flicked to the cake, then back to me. "Aaron, if this is some kind of trap—" "It's not a trap," I interrupted. "It's a chance for you to finally tell me the truth." She was quiet for a moment, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her napkin. Then she sighed, her shoulders slumping under the weight of whatever she was carrying. "What do you want me to say?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "That I screwed up? That I was selfish? Fine, I'll say it. But it doesn't change anything." "Doesn't change anything?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You lied to me. You cheated. You built a whole other life with him. And now you're telling me it doesn't matter?" Her gaze hardened, and for the first time, I saw defiance flicker in her eyes. "You want the truth, Aaron? Fine. I chose him because he made me feel alive. Because, for once, I wasn't just your wife. I was me. And maybe that makes me a bad person, but at least I was honest with myself." I leaned forward, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. "Honest? You call this honesty? Hiding, sneaking around, lying to my face, this is your idea of honesty?" She didn't answer. The silence between us was suffocating, the weight of everything we'd lost pressing down on both of us. Finally, I stood up, tossing a few bills onto the table. "Enjoy the cake, Lily. It's the last thing you'll get from me." And with that, I walked away, leaving her sitting there, alone with the wreckage of what we once had. I didn't go home after leaving the restaurant. Instead, I drove to a bar on the edge of town, the kind of place where the lights were dim, and no one cared enough to ask questions. The whiskey burned as it slid down my throat, but the pain was welcome, a distraction from the fire raging inside me. I'd thought confronting her would bring closure, clarity. Instead, it left me feeling more hollow than before. Her words replayed in my mind, twisting the knife she'd already plunged into my back. At least I was honest with myself. Honest. The audacity of it made my blood boil all over again. By the third drink, my phone buzzed on the bar. I glanced at the screen, expecting a meaningless notification. Instead, it was a text from an unknown number. "You don't know the whole story. Meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. coffee shop on 8th, Alex." Alex. I stared at the message, my grip tightening around the glass. Of all the scenarios I'd imagined, this wasn't one of them. What did he want? Why reach out to me now, after everything? My first instinct was to delete the message, to block the number, and shut him out of my life entirely. But the longer I sat there, the more curiosity gnawed at me. Maybe this was my chance to get answers. Maybe he'd let something slip, reveal a truth Lily hadn't. Or maybe I just wanted to look him in the eye and see the man who'd shattered my life. By the time I left the bar, I'd made up my mind. The next morning, I arrived at the coffee shop 10 minutes early. It was a quiet place, the kind of spot where the hum of the espresso machine blended seamlessly with the soft murmur of conversations. I chose a table by the window, giving me a clear view of the street. Alex arrived right on time. He was taller than I remembered, his tailored suit and confident stride radiating the kind of arrogance that made my skin crawl. He spotted me immediately and approached, his hand outstretched like we were old friends. "Aaron," he said, his tone annoyingly calm. "Thanks for meeting me." I didn't take his hand. He shrugged off the rejection, unbothered, and slid into the seat across from me with the ease of someone who was used to being in control. His movements were smooth, calculated, like he planned every detail of this encounter. "Why am I here, Alex?" I asked, skipping over any pretense of civility. He leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful, almost measured. "Because you deserve to hear the truth. From me." I let out a bitter laugh. "The truth? From the guy who's been screwing my wife behind my back? Spare me." His jaw tightened, but he didn't take the bait. "Look," he began, his tone steady. "I'm not here to justify what happened. I know what we did was wrong, but there's more to this than you realize." I leaned forward, my voice sharp and cold. "Then get to the point." Alex hesitated, glancing out the window as if searching for the right words. When he finally spoke, his tone had softened, almost apologetic. "Lily's been struggling, Aaron, for a long time. She told me things, about your marriage, about how she felt invisible, trapped. I didn't mean for this to happen, but—" I cut him off, my anger bubbling to the surface. "Don't." My voice was steady but simmering. "Don't sit here and pretend you were some kind of savior. You didn't mean for this to happen? You bought her flowers, you took her on trips, you built a relationship with her while she was still my wife." For the first time, his calm facade cracked. He held up a hand, his voice firm. "I'm not excusing it, Aaron. I'm just trying to explain. Lily's not happy, hasn't been for a long time." The words landed like a punch to the gut, but I refused to show it. "So what?" I snapped. "You're the magical solution to all her problems? What do you want from me, Alex? Validation? Forgiveness?" He shook his head slowly. "I don't want anything from you. I just need you to understand, this isn't just about you or me. It's about her. She needs to figure out who she is, and she couldn't do that in your marriage." I clenched my fists under the table, my nails biting into my palms. His words, rational as they were, didn't absolve him, or her. "You think I didn't try?" I asked, my voice trembling with fury. "You think I didn't give her everything I had? Maybe she was unhappy, but she never said a damn thing. Instead, she ran to you." Alex didn't respond right away. He studied me carefully, his expression unreadable. Finally, he said something that made the air leave my lungs. "She's not with me anymore." I blinked, the words taking a moment to register. "What?" "She ended it," he said, his voice quieter now. "A few days ago. Said she needed space to figure things out. That she couldn't keep lying to herself, or to you." My mind reeled. Lily had left him. After everything, she'd walked away. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice hoarse. He leaned forward, his gaze steady. "Because I want you to understand. She's lost, Aaron. And whether you believe it or not, she still cares about you. Maybe she's too proud to say it, but it's the truth." I didn't know how to respond. For weeks, my life had been consumed by anger and betrayal. Now, for the first time, there was something else, confusion. Alex stood, smoothing the front of his suit with practiced ease. "I don't expect you to forgive me, or her. But whatever happens next, don't let this destroy you. You deserve better than that." Without waiting for a reply, he walked out, leaving me alone with the weight of his confession. Lily had ended it. The woman who had torn my life apart for someone else was now just as adrift as I was. For the first time, I didn't know if that made me feel better or worse. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I stayed at the coffee shop, staring at the half-empty cup in front of me, trying to make sense of everything. Lily had left him. The man she'd thrown our marriage away for was no longer in the picture. And yet, the damage was already done. By the time I walked through the door of our house, it was late afternoon. The sight of her suitcase by the stairs stopped me cold. She was back. Lily was in the kitchen, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. When she looked up and saw me, her expression was unreadable. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. The air between us was thick with tension, weighed down by all the things we'd left unsaid. "You're here," I said finally, my voice sharper than I intended. She nodded, setting the mug down on the counter. "I came to pack." "Pack?" I echoed, though the suitcase made that obvious. I'm leaving, Erin, she said, her tone matter-of-fact. It's time. I didn't respond immediately. I wanted to say something, anything, that might cut through her detached demeanor. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I walked to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and leaned against the counter. So that's it? I asked, breaking the silence. You destroy everything, and now you're just leaving? Her jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought she might snap back, like she had so many times before. But when she spoke, her voice was quiet. I don't know what else to do. How about owning up to what you've done? I said, anger rising in my chest again. How about explaining why you thought it was okay to lie to me, to humiliate me? She looked down, her fingers tracing the edge of the counter. I've told you everything I can, Erin. I made mistakes, big ones. And I can't fix them. I'm not going to stand here and pretend I can. Her words hung in the air, stark and final. Her honesty, while sharp, lacked the remorse I so desperately wanted to see. It was as though she had resigned herself to being the villain in this story, and that only infuriated me more. Nathan told me you ended it, I said, watching her reaction carefully. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine, and for a moment, a flicker of something crossed her face. Surprise, maybe? You talked to him? He reached out, I said coldly. Told me you broke things off. Is it true? She nodded slowly. Yes, I ended it. Why? I demanded, the frustration bubbling in my chest. You gave up everything for him, and now he's just nothing? Her lips pressed into a thin line. When she spoke, her voice carried a tinge of frustration. Because I realized he wasn't the answer. He wasn't what I thought he was. I thought he could fix something that was broken, but he just made it worse. And now you're running, I said, shaking my head in disbelief. Instead of trying to fix the mess you created, you're running away. Her eyes narrowed, her tone hardening. What do you want me to do, Erin? Beg for your forgiveness? Pretend we can go back to the way things were? We can't. You don't get to decide that, I snapped. You don't get to make every choice in this marriage, to tear it apart, and then walk away when it's convenient for you. She crossed her arms, her voice sharp and unwavering. I'm not the only one who failed, Erin. Maybe I cheated, but you checked out long before Alex came into the picture. We were broken long before this. Her words hit me like a sledgehammer. I wanted to deny it, to tell her she was wrong, to hurl every ounce of blame back at her. But deep down, I knew there was some truth in what she said. For a long moment, we just stood there, the silence between us louder than any argument. Finally, I took a deep breath, the weight of everything settling in my chest. You're right, I said, surprising even myself. We were broken. But you didn't try to fix it. You gave up. And now so will I. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, I saw something resembling regret. I'm sorry, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. For everything. It wasn't enough. It couldn't be. But it was something. I nodded, the finality of it all washing over me like a tidal wave. Take your things and go, Lily. I'll call the lawyer tomorrow. She hesitated for a moment, as though there was more she wanted to say. But in the end, she just nodded. I watched as she carried her suitcase out the door. The sound of the wheels rolling down the driveway echoed in the quiet evening, each click a reminder of the life that was now behind me. When the door clicked shut, a strange mix of emotions settled in my chest, relief, anger, sadness. But above all, I felt free. Free to rebuild. Free to move on. Free to finally put the shattered pieces of my life back together. Lily was gone, and this time, I knew she wasn't coming back.